Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Family Fridays. Last week we talked about homeschool schedules, and we're going to kind of continue in that same vein a little bit, looking at some online curriculums and educational lessons, and just helping you in this new journey of having your kids home for school. I read an article this week and I thought it was so good. It talked about how really we are not homeschooling right now, we are crisis schooling. And the article talked about how crisis schooling is so different. We're all trying to figure it out, the teachers, the parents, the kids. It's not the situation that we prepared for. And I think for me, it just helped me to say, okay, I don't have to be Pinterest homeschool mom of the year. All I have to do is to kind of figure this out the best I can and move forward. So today we want to just help you a little bit more with that process. We have two teachers here that are going to share some of what they know and they learned, and they're also Duchenne parents. So we have Diana Rodriguez, who's a Duchenne parent and also an elementary school teacher, and then Gretchen Inger, who is a Duchenne parent and a high school teacher. So they're going to help us make that connection and really just understand the teacher's perspective and what kind of the teacher's expectations for us and how the teachers are partnering with us and all of those kind of things. So we'll listen and hear from both of them, and then we'll take your questions. So if you have some questions, please just go ahead and start asking them in the Facebook Live right there in the comments section, and we'll get your questions answered. And also, if you have anything that's worked this week that you can share with all of us struggling, that would be great too. So I just encourage you in those comments, please list some things that have been working. So let's go first to Diana and just kind of hear from her and some of her best tips for us. Diana?
Thanks, Rachel. Hi, everyone. So I am an elementary school teacher, and I'm just going to give you some tips on those elementary age students. And one important thing to remember at this time, kind of like Rachel says, this is new for everyone, new for students, new for parents, new for teachers, and it's a learning process for all of us. So it's not going to be perfect on day 1 or day 10 or day 5, whichever you happen to be on right now. So just kind of hang in there and do the best that you can and do what works best for your family. That's the most important thing. Your family is their number one priority. And just depending on what your home situation is like for these weeks when we are at home, is what you should focus on. So if you have working home parents, one of you is working, there's only one person at home, you kind of just have to go around your schedule and what works best. My first tip, I guess, is to look at all of your day and even the whole entire week that is put out in front of you by your child's teacher. So hopefully they're giving you weekly assignments and not just daily things. Or I shouldn't say assignments, but a schedule at least. You should have a weekly schedule to see what's coming up throughout the days. And at any time, you can combine activities together to make things go a little bit faster. Or if you see that two things can go together, something that maybe is done on Monday and something the teacher expects to be finished on Thursday, well, maybe you can fit it in just on Monday and work on it on that one day. You can also, what I like to do with my kids, so I have a 2nd grader at home and I have a 5th grader at home. And the first thing that we do on Monday is we are going to write out all the assignments, every single thing that we have to get done and where we're going to find those assignments. Which websites are they going to be on? Which apps do they need? What books do they need to have? And have it all in like a written plan. I know that I like to check things off on a list. So that could be helpful for your child as well to see that they feel accomplished with something. And it's not always so overwhelming when it's written out on paper, especially with now where everything is going to be online somewhere. Sometimes we have a lot of different websites to choose from. So if everything is kind of written out right there in front of you, kind of make that whole plan for your daily plan or your weekly plan. That should help as well. And then, like I said, one big thing is, don't feel like everything has to be done at once. You can group things together, you can spread things out. I don't think, at least I know for my students and my children's teachers, there's not like daily assignments that have to be turned in. It's more on that weekly basis that things have to be turned in that way. So you can feel free to spread it out as much as you can. Yeah, and I think that's it.
Okay,
for
great.
right now.
Great. Thanks, Diana. That's really helpful. I like the idea of looking at listing out all your assignments in the week. That got us, that caught us a little off guard this week. And so I've learned that lesson. That's helpful. All right, Gretchen, now if you can just share with us a little bit from the middle school, kind of high school perspective, what we need to be doing
Sure.
with our.
And I would echo that everything that Diana said for elementary applies to middle and high school as well. The biggest difference is that your kids have more than one teacher and they have to juggle whether everything in the district has been streamlined or in the school has been streamlined where they're using the same digital programs, or whether you have this teacher is using Google Classroom and this teacher is expecting you to go to Khan Academy, and they have like different places that they want you to go. Mm-hmm. And so I know for a lot of our Duchenne kiddos, they struggle with some of that organization. And I know we had talked earlier about students with dyslexia and struggling with handling written directions, because now everything, all directions, unless teachers do quick videos, kids have to read all the directions to understand that. So I think helping kids to process that, sitting down with them on Sunday night or Monday and checking to see, is everything done in a WAGS format, like weeks at a glance, where you're looking at, here's Monday through Friday, here's what my teacher is expecting. Some teachers are going to be struggling. I got to tell you, with this online digital learning, and if they haven't really embraced incorporating technology into their instruction, this is a huge leap for them too. And so I think, giving yourself grace is important, giving teachers grace as well too. If something isn't working, they're sending you links to all kinds of places and things aren't working well. I think it's important that you contact them right away and let them know that. But if you look and see, those traditional teachers may have, they're expecting something at 3:00 on Tuesday. They're expecting something, they're expecting all their kids in third hour to be present for some synchronous learning and to log into Zoom or Google Hangout at 10:00 on Wednesday. Try to map that into your schedule if you know that that's happening, if you can do it. But if you can't, you can't. And if an expectation seems like it's too much to meet, then it's too much to meet for you. And I think, stressing out at all about not being able to do this is new for everyone. I know I see sometimes we are quick to lash out when we can't do something because we feel that panic and that guilt that we can't do it. And I think it's really important that we all give ourselves grace and give everybody some grace and be polite about it. But in high school, I always say you want your kid to take the lead and, have them contact the teacher respectfully and nicely and say that they can't do it. If they struggle with doing that, of course, hopefully you have a good relationship with their teachers already. And you can communicate that for them. But I think if you express any kind of concern that something needs to be modified or something needs to be adjusted, particularly with any kind of timeline on something, I would be surprised if a teacher gives you pushback on that. And I think I follow a lot of educators on Twitter, and there's a woman that politically we disagree quite a bit, but as an educator, I really admire her. And in her district, they told her last night, because they're getting ready, next week is when they start their digital learning. And he said, whatever you have planned for that first week, cut it in half, and then cut it in half again. So, anybody who's expecting students to sit in front of their screen or have assignments from 8 to 3 or from 7 to 2:45, that is an unrealistic expectation. And so if as a parent, you're panicked that you have to be responsible for your student doing all those things, I don't think that's a reasonable expectation. And as you said at the beginning, Rachel, these are unprecedented and different times, and we're all truly in this together.
Yeah. Hey, great. Well, thank you, Gretchen. That was helpful. I want us to kind of move to some question time. So please, on the comment section, just send us your questions and I'll ask them for you. I have a couple I just wanted to start with, and it goes a little bit with what you just said, Gretchen. My son the other day, I went in at 9:30 and he said, I'm done for the day. And I was like, I'm pretty sure that's too short of a time. But what is a true expectation? Just once say you're in the homeschool routine for a week and the second week, what is a realistic expectation for, and I'll start with Diana with this question, but what should we realistically expect our elementary kids to be doing? How many hours a day feels about right? And I know it's going to be fluid, but in general, what would you say, Diana?
I would say if you're doing more than 3 hours, that's way too much. So it shouldn't be anywhere, I think, from 2 to 3 hours. And that doesn't have to be in one chunk either. They can just kind of be separated. But I think if you're going beyond 3 hours, it's going to be too much.
Okay, that's great. That's really helpful. And I think also something that I've learned is with working at home, I'm working full time from home as well, is sometimes I've been scheduling their school things not at the same time as when I'm working, and that kind of helps us as well. Okay, Gretchen, what do you think for middle school, high school? What's the expectation there, hours wise?
Well, really, probably not that different. I mean, if you look at the time that students spend when they're transitioning from class to class, the amount of energy that you consume trying to rein them all in and get them all listed at the same time for instruction, the actual focus, I'm sure, and I teach English, and so I want them reading and writing, and so you can read any time of day from when you wake up until before you go to bed at night. So that's really freeing that I can expand that way. If you have a student who's taking a lot of AP classes in high school, I know the College Board is working really hard to decide how can they, are they going to push back AP testing into the summer or a couple weeks later? Are they going to try something virtual? So those content-driven classes, they may have more of the online lecture, more of the processing. But again, I think if we're looking at the time that they spend as time that's focused, I think 2 to 3 hours max is fine. And, I have students emailing me. This was our spring break, and I had students emailing me over the weekend with questions about stuff. I had a girl contact me who never participated in class ever. She may have been on the verge of failing, and I'm an easy grader, so she didn't do very much work if she was on the verge of failing in my class. And she's contacted me asking questions about her iPad and how it works. And so, this is an awesome opportunity to get relationships with kids because you're outside of that setting and you've got 24 hours. Not that you'd be open to, live conversation in the middle of the night, but for them to engage with you. So I think, expecting them to be sitting down at the computer for 3 hours, 5 hours a day, that's unrealistic and not necessary.
Okay, great. That's helpful. That's really helpful to think about. And it's just a more fluid time. And the day is more fluid and we're not going anywhere. So you can certainly map out your schedule a little differently. We did have a question. I think this one's for Gretchen. Will the work being completed now count towards a grade point average? And I know you can't answer for every school, but maybe you could just say what your school is doing with that. And because I know a lot of kids doing AP or just, college bound are really stressed about that. So how are you doing it at your school, or how are you here? Have you heard people are doing the grades now toward grade point average?
Well, the University of Wisconsin-Madison has announced that all spring semester grades can be pass-fail. So, I mean, things are fluid and changing for sure. I think our expectation at the beginning in our district, because we've been one-to-one for about 10 years with iPads, has been we're going to roll with the flow and continue doing grades as of right now. But I think a lot of districts, particularly districts who were not set up for this and not as ready to go, I think they're probably making those decisions. I know, someone had said, any quiz or test that you're giving now, you're just going to assume that it's open book and open note. So it certainly changes things. The districts that are done for the year are probably just calling grades as is. And I know some districts didn't really have a plan in place because they worried about students with IEPs and how they're going to handle that equity with distance learning. So really, I don't have a solid answer, but again, grades don't reflect learning a lot of the time. And so if we can measure learning we can get them engaged and we can get students excited about learning. And as parents, we can participate more in asking questions and finding out how they're doing. I think bottom line, that's more important than grades. And then just remember, again, if we're worried about, early admission into Harvard or, what our class rank is going to be or whatever, every single kid in the country, in the world, is in this exact same situation.
Yeah. I think that's good to remember that the rules are going to have to be, they're fluid and everybody's in the same boat. So that kind of helps equal the playing field a little bit. I do want to talk about, because a lot of our Duchenne boys have learning issues. They have 504, they have IEP. And I know I've seen a lot of things going around about that and just confusion and and I don't think the schools have figured out how to deal with those things. And also just realizing at home, if your kid needs a one-on-one in school, they're probably needing your one-on-one at home, which is an extra layer of difficulty. So Diana, how do we work with, a lot of our Duchenne kids who have learning issues, ADD, all those things, and anxiety on top of it? How do you recommend we work with them at home?
Well, hopefully by this point in the school year, you have a good relationship with your child's teacher. So they're going to be, with elementary, that's going to be that one classroom teacher. So I would just get with them and see what their advice is. If they have a time, I know I have a friend who has an all-inclusive kind of class, and she's setting up certain hours on Zoom, just like we're chatting right now, to meet with her students and to conference with them, so they can kind of, tell her, hey, I want to see you, between, this hour, and she'll set up a time to do that. So it's going to be mostly just, teacher-student relationship and the relationship you have as a family too, to get those kinds of needs met. Okay. I think too, every state is still trying to figure out all those things to how to follow those IEPs. But I would hope that your teacher is going to, want to follow them and do the best that they can while they're at home.
Yeah. No, that's a good idea. Just asking for a one-on-one conference with your teacher with that. And because the reality is they may know some things that worked well in the classroom for your child that you didn't know because you weren't in the classroom. And if they could share some of the tips of things that they found that worked for your kid, that's helpful. Gretchen, do you have anything to add to that, just about our kids with IEPs and 504s?
Well, I think, as you know, as Diana said, this is March, and so we should have established pretty solid relationships with individual teachers or with that contact person in the special ed department. And so knowing, like for me as a teacher, this is an excellent time to differentiate, because you can modify assignments, you can, gear students to particular reading. I think, Audible is an excellent alternative for reading, and it's not, that there's no stigma to having headphones and listening to the audio as you go, or reading a more simplified text when you're in your living room, as opposed to sitting in a classroom with 30 other desks in it. But I would say if you have concerns about anything, definitely contact that support person or that special ed liaison that you had in the classroom.
Okay, great. So we have thanks, Gretchen. We have a question now, and I'm going to direct this one to Diana, because you have you're doing online curriculum as a teacher, but also as a parent, and with elementary kids. So this question is, what have been some of the struggles you've been facing adjusting to online curriculum at home, or while trying to include educational lessons in your day? Have you found any helpful tips? So I think if you could answer this from a parent and a teacher, how has it been working from your parent side and from your teacher side, and what tips have you found that worked?
Okay, so for us, this is our spring break this week. Last week was our extended spring break. So we haven't actually officially started anything yet. So we're 2 days away. On Monday, that's when we begin our online learning. So the week before, we were giving out just kind of simple assignments. As a teacher I was, and then also as a parent, my children's teachers were giving us, just kind of simple things just to kind of keep them engaged, so that they weren't just, doing nothing for 2 weeks. So I haven't experienced it fully yet, but what we did do is this few things that we did get done was we found that the morning is the best. In the summertime too, my kids, they're just going to be more alert and paying it more attention in the morning time. So right at breakfast, as we're eating breakfast, that's when we kind of looked at, well, what is it that we have to get done? And that seemed to help us, just getting us done, kind of things in the morning time. Again, what I said in the beginning of having that schedule really helps my boys. It's not going to help everybody, but my boys know that if they get everything done by this time, then they're going to get some kind of, their free time, their reward, their online socialization time with their friends. For me as a teacher, I'm still learning to the whole online thing. We were not prepared in any way. Our school isn't, one-to-one with devices. So it's been a challenge for sure, and a learning experience. So we're just, and that's again why I said in the beginning, it's just kind of a learning curve for everyone. And we know as teachers, it's not going to be perfect the first week going out, and we're not expecting perfect things coming back either. And I know from teachers that I know from all over, we're receptive to questions that parents have, ideas that they have too, and just kind of helping steer and guide how we can all figure this out. So I can't quite say exactly how it's been going, because we haven't actually done that yet. So come back and ask me on Monday, and I'll have a better idea.
Yeah. Thank you, Diana. We'll check back in with you after a week later and see where you are. I'll just say something that's been really helpful for us is our teachers have had on office hours from say 1 to 3 or 9 to 12, and that's it. And I try to contact them during that time just to respect their other time, because I know they're having to homeschool their kids at home as well. But those office hours have been really helpful for us. So Gretchen, tell us a little bit just how the experience has been for you with the online curriculum and what tips you can give.
Well, we have office hours from 9 to 11, and that is when, we're supposed to have our lesson plans up by 8 a.m. for the day. And I am going to start, because we started last Wednesday. So we had Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then this week is our spring break. So for those days, I threw up my lesson plans just a little before 8 o'clock, and I had it, Wednesday, I put up Wednesday, Thursday, I put up Thursday. And so I've already got next week set, or at least I've got the box. I don't have Wednesday, Thursday, like the end of the week completely mapped out yet. But I want for Monday to have the whole week set out there so that on Monday, there will be the students who go through and they look all the way at Thursday and Friday, and they're going to immediately start asking me questions about what I mean by this on Thursday. And so that's going to really help me to plan things out better. We also set something out in our district that for our school, that had every single teacher how we were going to be putting out our lesson plans, like what tools we used, WebEx, Blackboard 9, Google Classroom, and then, or anything else. And then those office hours and preferred method of communication. So most of us said email, some people said WebEx, and that was something that then teachers, parents would be able to look at, and it's kind of a go-to for them as they're trying to navigate stuff for their kids. And it has really worked out. Again, I really preach, I want the students to call me and talk to me themselves. So I haven't had specific yet, parent communication. But I just love hearing from my students and the questions that they ask.
Yeah.
I miss them.
Yeah. That's great. And I think, since we don't have middle school represented here, I think that's kind of what I would just say, having a middle schooler is you have to bridge that between sometimes them reaching out and sometimes you helping them if they get stuck with technology or things like that. But it is a good opportunity too for your middle schooler to learn how to reach out while you're there coaching them and helping them know the questions to ask and that kind of thing. So I think that can be a really great opportunity for your middle schooler. So we have another question, and this one, I assume several people have this question. What do you do when your school, your district doesn't have e-learning opportunities? How should you move forward trying to do this without when your district doesn't have that technology and capability? So I know both of you, all your districts do, but what would you suggest to someone whose district is shut down for the year or they don't have e-learning opportunities? So Diana, do you want to start with that?
Sure. So there's a lot of great websites for the elementary age kids that right now they've opened up, free months. And I'm going to assume that as this extends further, if it does, they may extend those subscriptions. So there's a lot of things. Let me see. I have a bunch of them written down here. There's one called Adventure Academy that's for ages 8 to 13. And they have everything on there. My second grader loves it. It's one thing that we started last week. It has reading, there's books, there's videos on grammar, there's different lessons on science, there's social studies, kind of everything. And they get to, build their own little avatar and build their house as they go along with lessons. And there right now, I know they have a free 1 month subscription for even younger kids. There's ABC Mouse, which is pretty popular. They're also offering free subscriptions right now. Brain Pop has free subscriptions. There's a science website called Generation Genius. So pretty much any kind of educational website out there that you can come across. And I know sometimes, and I don't know if it's just me on Facebook, but it seems like their ads always pop up as you're scrolling through things. You see them repeatedly. A lot of them have opened up their subscriptions, like I said, to kind of tie in that time when kids don't have the technology if they're not getting it from the school. Or like you said, if school is already closed. like Gretchen said, Audible too. They have lots of kids books on there. There are other websites called, what is it? One of them, Storyline Online, where there's celebrities reading chapter books and picture books to kids. So there's lots of different ways in order to kind of bridge that gap if you find that you have one with your school.
Okay. Great. And also want to say that Parent Project has put some resources online. They've been really working hard on that. So if you go to the COVID-19 space, I believe there's some resources there, and that you can look and see. They've just kind of been adding them as they've found them as well. So that's great. I think luckily we have a lot of technology that we can build on and kind of fill in the gaps. Okay, this question is for Gretchen, and I didn't write it, although I could have. How do you help high school kids be motivated to do their work, and how do you help them manage their time when they don't really want help?
That's a question you could ask any day, anytime, regardless of, like, for any parent. I think the helping them manage their time, if you can just sit down with them and ask them about that, looking at the week at a glance, and get them to maybe write down the schedule of when big things are due. Motivation for sure is an issue, but again, this is an opportunity, I think, to free things up, because they do have the whole day. There aren't a lot of other places they can go. There are the ebooks, and a lot of my students went home without their independent book that they were reading, or the book that my 10th graders were reading together as a class. And so I have the PDF online for them, and they can access books online, but they're spending so much time on their phones and their iPads and their computers, just because that's how they are anyway, that if we have any opportunity to get them off, to get them outside and doing something, it's not the same situation where, like Diana was saying with her kids, where you sort of have control over their movement. You do this and then you get to go outside, or you do this and then we're going to make pizza for lunch, because they're, creatures of will when they're teenagers. But I think, just encouraging kids to, this is such a crazy time. So encouraging them to see the opportunity of it. They can be looking at books that interest them if they have choice and freedom in what they do. You have the opportunity, since you're both stuck at home, to ask them questions about what they're learning, show interest in things, ask them questions, and make them the expert. If they're learning something and studying something that you think is ridiculous, I really don't have a problem with you saying, like, yeah, this seems kind of silly to me too, but let's check it out and dive in this together. I think your second part was motivation. The first part of your question was managing the time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I got to tell you, I am surprised at how some of my kids have risen to the occasion with this. I do not have honors students. I mean, like typical, like it's not an honors class that I teach. And I had a student who was suspended right before we got out, because I assume he was using. And he wrote in his writing piece, because they're journaling, just whatever this time is meaning to them. And he wrote in his writing piece that this was so stupid, and he was really frustrated, and he didn't understand why his teachers were giving him all this crap work to do, and blah, blah, blah. And so I, emailed him back I emailed him, and I said, I just try to cut us some slack. We're really not trying to overwork you or anything. And he emailed me right back, and I think it was a Sunday. He emailed me right back and was like, I didn't mean you. I'm really sorry. I'm just having a rough time with all this. And of course, he didn't capitalize anything in the email. But I think, it's just a time we can engage with kids here. And if we seize it as an opportunity, this is a time that you're connecting with your teenager that you otherwise may never have had. And I think how we frame it, I think it can make all the difference.
No, I think that's good. And I think as Duchenne parents anyway, we understand that time is limited, and to be grateful for the time that we have, and And I do hope parents see this as a little bit of a gift to have more time with your kids, more connection time, more conversation time, and that sort of thing. Okay, so my last question that I want to do kind of as we move toward wrapping up is I just want to hear from the teacher part of both of you to say, how can parents support you during this time? How can they partner? What is your ideal parent-teacher relationship during this homeschooling time? So Diana, if you'll start.
Well, like I said already, just remember that this is new to us and we are also figuring this out. So, that's probably the biggest thing is, and just to give us like some grace, like, hey, if week 1 you thought it was a lot of work, you might find that, week 2 that we'll maybe ease up on it and realize that we did send too much work. Just simple things like that. But also kind of remember too that a lot of teachers are also parents. So we're in this whole thing together. So kind of keep that in the back of the mind that if, you are kind of needing some help or are asking a question, don't always think that you're going to get an immediate response, because unfortunately we could be busy helping our own kids. So just kind of give like that little space and realize that, again, not everything has to be done at the very second that it's assigned. So that goes for the, what the teacher has given and what you need to, and just kind of make sure that that communication is there, I guess, too. And just to, open up and realize that we are struggling to make the lessons in our family as well. So just keep that kind of in the back of their minds. Yes.
Thank you. And Gretchen?
I would echo everything that Diana says. And if you are frustrated, you've given the teacher some grace and you're looking at everything and it seems unrealistic, or you really have a question, definitely, contact the teacher and ask, or, encourage your student to inquire as to what the expectations are. If you need extra time for something, if there is a deadline on something and your kid needs extra time, ask for it. Because there's nothing worse than feeling that, knowing that someone was frustrated with you, or finding out that somebody was frustrated and unhappy and you weren't aware of that. And had you been aware of it, you definitely would have been open to changing things. So I think open communication, honest, respectful, polite communication is what I would say.
Okay, great. Thank you. And we're grateful for both of you and just for all the teachers out there who are struggling through this with us. So before we go, I wanted to just remind you of a couple things. One is we have a daily Duchenne 20 that's coming up and that we're in right now. It's a fundraiser through PPMD just to help us remember we got to keep going with Duchenne and all the research and everything we need for that. And so Gretchen actually has already signed up for the Duchenne Daily 20. And so Gretchen, can you kind of tell us what you're doing and give a little bit more information about how easy it is to get started?
Yeah, the coolest thing about PPMD's latest fundraisers is that you can connect it with Facebook, and then every time you post to that on Facebook, it goes out to all of your friends so that they see it. So it's meant to be kind of a family, getting your whole family together doing something. But my family at home right now just consists of my husband and me and our dog, who I didn't get in my first picture. But I run, but my husband really doesn't, except for he practices a little bit to do our Shamrock Shuffle for PPMD that got canceled because it was supposed to be on the 15th. And so I got him to commit to walk with me every day. And the big thing is it's no matter the weather. So if it's raining, if it's snowing, because we might get snow, we will be out and we will walk a minimum of 20 minutes, but I'll probably make them go a couple miles every day.
Great. Great. So just encourage you to sign up for that. It's, a lot of our fundraisers had to be canceled, our local fundraisers for PPMD. So we need to figure out a way to support the community and to keep moving things forward. So I invite you to sign up for the Duchenne Daily 20. Thank you so much for joining us today for Family Fridays. It is Friday, so I am going to ask you at 4 o'clock today to put all your kids' school books away and go grab a frozen pizza out of the freezer and have movie night and just take a deep breath because you survived the week inside. But just have some family time tonight and give them a couple days off before you get started again. And this is just one part of the piece. And I'm just so thankful for Diana and Gretchen for sharing with us and helping us through it. Continue to reach out if you have questions. I know they would be open to that as well. And we're just here to support each other as we walk through these next few days. So we will see you next Friday again for another Family Friday. Thanks for joining us.